Another nice small feature that we can add to an API is to provide an alias route to a request that might be very popular, so that might be requested all the time. And for example, we might want to provide a route specifically for the 5 best cheap tours, okay? So if we'd use our regular route here with the filters and with all the features that we already have, the request would look a little bit like this. So let's get rid of all of this. So the 5 best and cheapest tours. So that means we have a limit of 5, right? And then we're gonna sort by ratings and by price. Okay, so sort, and then the average rating and descending. So minus ratings average. And in case they have the same average, then we want the cheapest price possible. And so we're going to sort also by price. Okay, so let's quickly take a look at the results. And indeed, we get 5 tours here. And Postman does this scrolling again. So we have tours with 4.9, 4.9, 4.9 again, 4.8, and 4.7. Okay, and so these are actually our 5 best and cheapest tours. If we said cheapest and best, well then maybe we would have to sort by price first, because some of them are not really cheap, for example this one, okay, but we selected first the average, okay, and so we sorted by the highest average first, and only then, in case of a tie, basically only then by the price. Alright, now let's say that this is a request that is done all the time, and we want to provide a route that is simple and easy to memorize for the user. Okay, so let's go to our app and try to implement that. And we're going to start at the routes, so to a router, and we then need to create a new route. And let's do that here right at the top. So router dot route. And so how are we going to call this route? Well, let's say top 5 cheap. All right. So quite a simple name, but it's going to work. And then we actually only want get requests to this route. Okay, and so now it's time to think. How are we going to implement this functionality? Well, in essence, what we want is to actually still get all the tours, just like here. And so let me go ahead and start by copying and pasting that here. So we really still want to use this function here, because it doesn't really make sense to rewrite all of the logic that is in there. But before we can call this route handler, we basically want to prefill some of the fields in the query string, right? So we already know that our query string should look like this. And actually we can add some more stuff here. But in essence, our query string has to look something like this. And so the solution is going to be to run a middleware before we actually run this getAllTours handler. Okay, and so that middleware function is then going to manipulate the query object that's coming in. All right, and so this is yet another really nice example of using middleware, because you really need to get familiar and used to this concept of using middleware strategically in order to change the request object as we need it. Okay, so let's add it here then. So tour controller, and then the middleware function that we're going to create in a second, which is going to be called alias top tours. Okay, so let's copy that name, move to the tour controller, and I'm going to put it here at the very top. So exports dot then request response. And what's the third argument that we need in the middleware? Remember? And I know the express section is kind of far away already at this point, but I hope you remember that the third argument here needs to be next. So in order to call the next middleware that's in the middleware stack. All right. All right, give it a save. And so this error there should disappear. Okay, and so let's do what we said we would do. So basically to manipulate the query object so that when it reaches the getAllTours handler, it's then already different. Okay, so let's first do that and then really take a look at what happens. So remember, the limit is going to be set to 5. And remember that everything is strings here, and so I'm setting this also to a string. Okay, now what else did we had? So we have this sort. So let's just copy this here and say request.query.sort should be this. And then we can actually also specify some fields so that the user doesn't get all of the fields that we have in there. So let's say that we only want the name, the price, the ratings average, the summary, and the difficulty. All right, give it a save, and now all we need is next. All right, otherwise this middleware will be stuck here forever and cannot move on. Okay, so let's now figure out a bit better what's actually going to happen here. So as soon as someone hits the top 5 cheap route, we will start. The first middleware that's going to be run is alias_top_tours. So the function that we just created. Okay. So what this is going to do is that it will set these properties of the query object to these values that we specified here. Basically pre-filling parts of the query object before we then reach the getAllTours handler. All right. And so as soon as we then get to this function, the query object is already pre-filled, even if the user didn't put any of these parameters in the query string. All right. And so in essence, what we're doing here is to pre-filling the query string for the user so that the user doesn't have to do it on his own. Okay. And so let's now actually go ahead and try this. So I'm copying this. And here it's not tours, it is top 5 tours. Whoa, what's going on here? For some reason it doesn't find this route. So let's go back. So top 5 tours. And so here in a route, okay, it's called top 5 cheap. So my mistake here. So cheap, send it now. And that's still not correct. Yeah, of course. I still have to put the tours here, of course. So we are in the tours resource, and the whole router is mounted onto this tours route. Remember that. And so it's in that tours kind of mini application. Remember that, where I created this top 5 cheap route. So let's hope it works now, and indeed it does. Okay, so that worked. That's fantastic. Now, of course, we could do a lot more alias routes here, but that's not really necessary. I really just wanted to show you the concept, show you that it can be a nice feature to add to any API, and also I wanted to again show you the power of middlewares. All right, so we're talking about Mongoose here, but still it's very important to keep getting familiar with the express concept that we talked about before. All right. Anyway, we're now done with our API features. In the next video, we're just going to quickly refactor all of this to make the entire code a bit more modular and, of course, better. All right.